Hello, today I am interviewing Bill McNabb, who's the former CEO of Vanguard Group. He is in his home outside Philadelphia. Bill is a Wharton School alum, and he's a senior fellow at the school. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today.
Glad to be here, Mauro, during these very unprecedented times.
Thank you. So the first question that I have for you is, if you were the CEO of a major company right now, how would you communicate to employees issues regarding the crisis?
Yes, I'd be focused on a couple of things. First would be I would be incredibly transparent about everything that we know. So if colleagues were getting sick or if we needed to shut certain operations down due to government regulation or whatever, I would be very transparent. I would not hide anything from anyone. I know that sounds really basic, but it's interesting to me. A lot of organizations don't follow that. The second thing I would be doing is, and having lived through this at Vanguard during multiple crises, I would be doing everything I can to assure my employees about their job security so that they could take care of our customers. In the investment markets, we never shut down. So we have to be there for our clients. And during the GFC, for example, we made a real point of don't worry about your own job. It's good. Focus on taking care of our customers. It's their money that we've got a fiduciary responsibility toward.
Yes, and of course, Vanguard has become the largest mutual fund provider in the world and the second largest exchange-traded fund.
Yeah, we've had a lot of success, and I think part of it is people know us for fair dealing and for doing the right thing. And as a leader, you want to convey the importance of that, especially during times of crises.
So, as a leader of a large organization such as this, in a situation like the current one, would you be more concerned about overreacting or about underreacting?
So I think when it comes to crises like this, I would not be concerned about overreacting in the sense that, look, when you're in unprecedented times, I think it's very important to keep moving forward. So we made a point. We met every single day during the last crisis. I know the team is doing that right now. And we try to make a series of day-to-day decisions. We did not actually spend a ton of time focusing on the long run. We really focused on what do we need to do today to take care of our people and to take care of our clients. And I think, in a sense, that may sound like an overreaction, but I think it's really important that you put the day-to-day work first and foremost.
So how do you think the crisis is going to affect those customers that you were talking about, and in particular, small investors?
Yeah, I think this is the kind of period that's going to be incredibly difficult for small investors, and for a couple of reasons. One, everybody's worried about their own job security because so many businesses are being either forced to close down or are having to scale back because of the lack of demand because of the types of business that they're in. So, first and foremost, small investors are worried about that. The second thing that I think always bothers any investor, whether it's the most sophisticated professional or, the average person who's just trying to save a little bit of money, is volatility. We're at record levels of volatility. We haven't seen this kind of volatility since the GFC, and we are right at the same high levels of volatility that we experienced then. That kind of uncertainty and the Dow going up 2,000 points and dropping 2,000 points in a day makes it very, very difficult for people. And so we have a few basic things we try to really reinforce with small investors. The first is, and it's counterintuitive, you cannot pay attention to the short-term noise. You have to have a long-term plan in place, and you have to keep your focus on that long-term plan. And let's say you're saving for a child's college education 15 years from now. You've got a 15-year time horizon. You don't want to be reacting day to day to that. You want to have a target asset allocation that reflects that, and you want to actually keep your asset allocation in that rough proportion. So if the stock market draws down dramatically and you find yourself underweight stocks, you actually have to buy into this weakness. And actually, those time-tested principles of rebalancing have actually served investors incredibly well. There's a couple of stats I always like to point out to people. If you look at 20-year investment periods, if you miss the 10 best days in that 20-year period, your equity return drops to that of a treasury bond. So think about that. You lose 400 to 500 basis points of return. If you miss the 30 best days in that 20-year period, so again, we're not talking about a big, you're talking about 1 month cumulatively out of 20 years, your return goes from positive to negative. So last 20 years, for example, if we look at the last 20-year period, equities have averaged 6%. If you miss the 10 best days, you only get 2%. If you miss the 30 best days, you will lose 3% a year. Those numbers are staggering to me. And what they reinforce is nobody can market time. And so what you want to be constantly doing is rebalancing to your target allocation and taking a long-term perspective.
Okay, that's very wise advice. One last question for you. You were once a philosophy teacher in school before joining the financial services industry. So what type of advice would you give students, specifically Wharton and Penn students, during this difficult time?
I think for the young people in this country in particular, this is one of the most challenging periods ever, because when you look at the extent of this virus and what's happening, young people are generally not nearly as impacted by it. And so I know it's very difficult to sort of figure out, how do I navigate this? If I get a quote unquote a flu-like set of symptoms, I'm not all that worried. The problem, as you know, is that this thing disproportionately affects people with chronic conditions and older people. And so what we worry about is if you get a massive spread of the virus, you're going to end up with millions of people in very, very challenged positions. It's going to overwhelm our hospital system, and we could see literally more deaths from this than we've seen in the cumulative world wars, Vietnam, the Middle East, and so forth. And that would be a tragedy. And so I think that's why these extraordinary measures are being taken. But I think when you're 20 years old and you're trying to navigate all this, sometimes that message gets lost. So point one would be you got to step back and sort of think about society as a whole here, which is very difficult. But this is a chance for this group to exert tremendous leadership and really make a difference. The second thing, and this is maybe a little more generic to any kind of crisis, out of these crises will come opportunities. And if you have a long enough time horizon and the right perspective, and you can sort of navigate and be calm, you're going to find some opportunities that perhaps would not have arisen before. And I would say seize those opportunities as they come about and try to make something of them.
Well, thank you so much. This was Bill McNabb, former CEO and chairman of Vanguard. Thank you so much, and stay healthy.
Mauro, same to you and same to our audience. I hope everybody is safe, sane, and keeping a long-term perspective here.
Thank you very much.